Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Da 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 da.
Right, so I'm still stuck here trying to figure out the Bond timeline and get out of this trap. But I mean, I escaped that whole Saw scenario thing that I did a while back, so I can get out of this. Now, where were we? We left off finishing in 1985, talking about View to a Kill.
2 years later, things changed with 1987's The Living Daylights. Although M is back, but Bond has a new face as Prince Baron takes on the role. He was 41 at the time, so he's closer to our supposed age of Bond at this point, and we get our standard intro, and James is assigned to help a KGB agent defect. And Q's back, but when we see Moneypenny, she's dropped about 2 decades in age. It's possible that Moneypenny is a codename, and this is a new character, much like people think with Bond, although her relationship with him is the same as the previous one, and it's more likely that this is the same character. So we basically have 2 options at this point. Either assume that ages don't really matter, as these are 2 people in their mid-40s, or that this is a soft reboot and we're in a separate continuity now in which things happened in a similar manner to what we've already seen, just on a different time schedule. Bond is assigned to kill the new head of KGB, who's kind of Gimli-ish, and we meet Whitaker, and it's Ma Mitchell. Bond falls for Koskov's girl, and this big banner tells us that it's 1987, so we're still in real time, and 2 years have passed since View to a Kill. Once he figures out that Koskov is the real bad guy, they fake Pushkin's death, and Felix shows up for the first time since Live and Let Die, once again played by a new actor, and we see Bond's fake passport, which was issued in August of '86, but we already know that we're past that. He teams up with Afghani rebels, and there's a big battle, and then...
What happened?
He got the boot.
See? It's still the same guy.
Bond takes out Hamilton and gets the girl, and I guess we're just gonna get a general assurance that James will return, but not say in what. Just 2 years later, in 1989, he did return in License to Kill, which kicks off with Felix getting married, although he's aged dramatically since the last film, and is back to being played by David Hedison, who played the character in Live and Let Die. And then Robert Davi pops in. Intro stuff, and then, holy crap, Felix is marrying Terry! They say James married once a long time ago, and it's a sore subject, tying in continuity to Tracy, again asserting that even if you're going with this as being a separate continuity to old movies, it's still the same character. If James Bond was a code name, there would be no reason for Felix to say this. Little baby Fenster's here, and they kill Della and feed Leiter to a shark, although he manages to survive. Bond gets revenge, so M shows up and revokes his license to kill. James then teams up with a CIA informant, Pam, and Young Money's back, and wow, Wayne freaking Newton is here too. Q shows up, and there's some standard intrigue, and a pressurized exploding head, and eventually Del Toro gets collected.
Oh, God is Heller.
Yeah, looks like he came to a dead end.
That's not really a joke even. It's not even a pun. He's just dead, so dead end, I guess.
Thankfully, Bond is able to drive a semi on 2 wheels at the exact angle necessary to avoid an oncoming rocket, and in the final face-off, James gives him a hot Sanchez.
That's a sex thing, right?
Bond gets the girl, of course, and we're still doing the generic return thing, huh? So there wasn't a date in this one, but so far it's all been real time, so I think calling this 1989 is fair. So it took a little while longer for James to return, and he didn't show up again until 1995's GoldenEye, which kind of throws everything into upheaval, but also, I think, puts the final nail in the coffin of the Bond as codename theory. There's a little mistake here, as this Soviet is reading a paper from 1995, even though this scene is set in the past. And we meet James Bond, now played by Pierce Brosnan, and 006 Stark shows up, so you know he's gonna die. The Bean always dies.
For England, James!
Told ya.
After a pretty wild airplane stunt and our trippy intro, we cut to 9 years later and Jean Grey shows up, and then so does Nightcrawler. And then we meet our new Moneypenny, and her and James have their whole flirting thing still going on. And then we meet the new M, Dame Judi Dench. With a new Bond, M, and money, you can again take this two ways. This is the same Bond and MP, and they're just playing characters that are older than they are, or this is a soft reboot and the first of a new series. Either way you want to take it is pretty valid. You don't have to make this the first of the series to include it in Bond's full continuity, you just have to not really care that he doesn't look his age. The General's file says that he was rehabilitated after the destruction of a base, which was the opener, and the rehabilitation was in 1987, which may have been when the opening was set, but that would make this 1996, 1 year ahead of real time, and 7 years after the last one, and Bond would be 55. Brosnan was only 42 or so he'd be playing older, although James could just not look his age. Also, having the opening take place in 87 means that James Bond as codename theory is gone, because we know that back in 87, James was involved in the events of the Living Daylights. That could have been earlier in the year in the opening of GoldenEye later that year, but it's definitely 007, so there'd be no reason to have two agents with the same name. So that's the final confirmation that it's not multiple guys with a shared codename. Q pops in, still played by Desmond Llewellyn, so that's the same in this continuity, or still the same depending upon how you want to view this. And then, oh no, Hamilton's back, but isn't he dead? Well, that's because Joe Don here is a new character named Jack Wade, and he's CIA, and they're looking to stop GoldenEye, a satellite capable of emitting an EMP. Hagrid helps out, and Minnie Driver shows up for like 1 minute. Turns out that 006 is alive, so maybe the Bean won't die. And how much do you think Perrier paid for this? James takes out Xenia, and there's the exploding pen, and 6 and 7 fight it out on a satellite dish, and see? Bean always dies. Oh wait, he's okay. Well, maybe not now. And Cummings must be goings. Bond gets the girl, and even Brosnan gets a generic return, and you know what? I'm not including these anymore since they just say he'll return, and it's not really interesting anymore. Bond was officially back, and 2 years later we saw the release of Tomorrow Never Dies, and Emma's back, and the guy who will always be known as the dude who gets lasered in Resident Evil is here. James punches a smoker and tells him it's a filthy habit, one that he quit like 2.5 decades ago. Intro stuff, a little random Gerard Butler.
So we're now down 14 degrees by the stern.
And our villain is Mr. Dark here, who has a media empire and is controlling the news. Moneypenny 3 is back, and we're given the date as April 11th, 1997, so we're back to real time and just 1 year after the last one. Lois Lane shows up, and is Michelle Yeoh the Crouching Tiger or the Hidden Dragon? Lynn is of course also a spy.
They'll print anything these days.
Alright, I guess at least that one's appropriate.
And then they're real, and they're dead. And then the subway ghost pops in, and there's this whole commercial for BMW cars and Ericsson phones, and this is kind of crappy. There's no way that he could have ensured that there would be no people walking there or in that store. He very easily could have killed multiple innocent people. Wade's back, and Bond and Wade kill a helicopter with a motorcycle, and they finally track down Carver's secret submarine that they're using to try to set off a war between China and Britain. And there's a final showdown where Carver gets fed to a big drill thing, and the day is saved. Back on the 2-year schedule in 1999, we get The World Is Not Enough, which gives us a date in the first couple of minutes as we're still in real time, and it's November of 1999. The letter gang is here, intro's here, and Robinson is back as well, as this X-ray backs up our November 99 date. We meet R, who Q is grooming as a replacement, and it's Archie Leach, and sad to say that this is our goodbye to the character, as Desmond was killed in a car accident right after the film's premiere. When talking to Elektra here, she asks him if he's ever lost someone he loved, and he changes the subject quickly, a tiny hint of continuity and the first bit of it in the Brosnan era. Although Tracy isn't mentioned explicitly, it's clear that he lost someone. Valentine is back and has Goldie as a henchman for some reason, and we finally meet our villain, and it's Begbie. Then, when Bond goes to a Russian base, he meets Christmas Jones, played by Denise Richard, who's a nuclear I can't say nuclear physicist there without laughing, sorry. Renard steals a bomb, and Elektra's a bad guy, but let's face it, it was pretty obvious. And Bond and Jones team up, and there's this helicopter with buzzsaw thing that just seems like a really inconspicuous thing. Like, how do they get this thing around? They obviously had to travel to get here, and this does not look retractable. So how does this copter get from point A to point B without being noticed? Bond gets captured.
The world is not enough.
Foolish sentiment.
Family motto.
All right, I'm calling that continuity. It's slight, but it counts.
Zukovsky is killed, and Bond takes out Elektra, saves Jones, who, again, is a nuclear scientist, in case you forgot that. Reynard is killed, and James has himself an early Christmas. There was a 3-year gap into 2002's Die Another Day, which starts off with surfing. Yes, surfing. There's a big opening action scene that ends with Bond getting captured by North Korea, and then the opening bit, which bounces to 14 months later, so we're bare minimum in 2001 here. Michael Madsen shows up.
Strip down naked, get your clothes off, and douse yourself in the syrup.
M is here, and Bond is after Zhao, a North Korean terrorist, which takes him to Cuba. He meets Jinx, who looks like Halle Berry in a bikini, and this letter is from March of 2001, so that seems like our year, 1 year earlier than the release date. And 2 years after the last one, although the intro would take place in the early part of 2000, a very short time after the last film. Oops, nope, Jinx writes a check and it's dated 11/11/2002, so this one is actually set 3 years after the last one, and that means the North Korea stuff actually happens at the tail end of summer of 2001, and that places this film back into real time again. Zhao is trying to fix his diamond-crusted face. Moneypenny and Robinson are here, as is the Gone Girl in her first film role, and our main villain, Gustav Graves, shows up. Next, Bond meets Madonna in a scene that's not the silliest thing about this movie, as you'll soon see. We actually see James in his office for the first time since On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and Q's here, as Cleese now has the title, and we get a whole bunch of continuity nods assuring us that even if you want to accept that Brosnan's Bond is a separate continuity, he still went on the same adventures, just possibly at a different time period. There's the shoes with the daggers in them from Russia with Love, the jetpack from Thunderball, the diving helmet from For Your Eyes Only, the crocodile from Octopussy, the snooper from View to a Kill, and possibly a dozen more that go by too fast to recognize. Frost is actually MI6, and
I'm Mr. Kill.
Well, there's a name to die for.
Yep, they're not getting any better.
they go to Graves' Ice Palace, which is kind of a proper Bond villain hideout. And Jinx shows up, and James gets his most realistic gadget ever, the invisible car. Things take a weird turn when it turns out the Grave is actually Moon, from the beginning, with a new face. Frost is a traitor, and there's this space laser chase scene with some really amazing CG graphics. I mean, wow, look at this. How awesomely real. I mean, he's not even slightly damp. Zhao's license plate confirms that it's O2, and he gets iced. And then Graves/Moon kills his own dad, and we go to our final face-off with Jinx taking out Frost, and Bond gets Graves. Bond and Moneypenny finally get it on, but it's just a virtual reality program because actual James is banging Jinx.
So that wraps it up for Brosnan, who was essentially fired from the role for cost reasons, as well as the producers wanting someone younger for the character yet again. And guys, this is starting to not look good here.
Who said something about somebody not looking good?
What are you even doing here?
Just hanging out.
You're hanging out. We're in a supervillain's secret lair in some sort of dungeon, and you just happened to pass by?
Yeah. Is that unbelievable?
I guess not.
Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom,